Is everybody good for that? I want to welcome everybody today to the webinar series for seniors and caregivers. The topic today is talking about how we can connect with our family members during the holiday to learn a little bit more about some really important topics that are important all year long, but we certainly have an opportunity during the holidays when we come together more, whether that be this year by Zoom or by phone or in person if we're lucky, to learn a little bit more about each other, to find some life stories that we take down our path with us, and to have that time, that really connected time, to talk about the important documents and plans and desires that we as individuals and our family members have. We're really honored today to have two very knowledgeable experts in this area. Fred Haiman from Haiman+Hogue. Fred is our resident attorney, I'm going to tell you, because if I have any questions, this is who I go to. They are an elder law firm, and they have offices both in Arlington and Frisco. And then Kristine Reed, who is general manager over 4 of the Dignity Memorial locations, and she covers Richardson, Plano, Frisco, and Dallas. So thank you both for being here today. There's a couple of housekeeping issues that I'd like to just address very quickly. Oh, thank you, Marty. These are the sponsors. We started doing this series back in May, and we do it always on the 3rd Thursday of every month. So please look for us. It's being sponsored by the City of Plano, the Wellness Center for Older Adults, and the Area Agency on Aging for North Central Texas, which is Marty, and of course, Dignity Memorial. The housekeeping issues are this. If you have a question, we invite all your questions. If you could type them into the chat area, and at the end of the presentation, we will get to all of the questions that you may have, or any of the questions that you may have. And we'll also give you contact information if you would like to explore something a little further with other folks. So with that, Fred, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate that very much. I'm going to talk to you guys today about what I call the ice pack. I kind of came up with this, was asked a while back to put together something important dealing with COVID-19, but this is kind of applicable throughout whether we're dealing with this pandemic or not. For those of y'all who have never met me, my name is Fred Haiman. I am one of the co-founding partners of Haiman+Hogue. I've been practicing law for going on 23 years now. Prior to being an attorney, I was a police officer out in El Paso, Texas, which is being hit extremely hard right now by COVID. Was an officer out there for over 5 years before I went back to law school. And I always tell people, please don't hold it against me that I'm an attorney, because I probably don't like them more than you don't like them, because I have to work with them all the time. But I remember when I went from being a police officer to going to law school, my chief was sure to let me know that he thought I was going to the dark side. So luckily I haven't gone all the way to the dark side. Now I'm working in an area that I absolutely love, and our firm and our team have the opportunity every day to help people. It's just an amazing thing that we get to do to help people in the elder community and throughout the lives of what we're doing. It's wonderful. What I'm going to cover today is what I think are the most essential things that you need to think about and your family needs to think about, because one of the things that we find that is kind of a human nature trait is that we all have the "it's not going to happen to me" mentality. You hear about these stories of people going through COVID and people getting sick and all these things happening, and we, until it hits us personally or our family, we all live in that world of, oh, it's not going to happen to me, so I don't really need to do things. Well, unfortunately, it does happen to you, and it happens to all of us, and we're all susceptible to get injured or ill or in an accident, or at some point in our life, we all are going to die. And whether we like to face that or not, we need to look at it. So Marty, let's go ahead and start through the presentation. I'm going to cover some of these documents that I think are very important for what I call this ice pack. And this ice pack is in case of an emergency that your plan should always be kept current. So you need to make sure that you have documents in place, and everything that you need needs to be organized as much as possible and in a location where family can find it. And it needs to be kept current, because if you put documents in place 5 or 10 years ago, they are, although they don't ever expire per se, they get less and less effective because there's so many things that happen in life, both in our personal life, in our financial life, and in the law. So we recommend that you keep your things current every 3 to 5 years, that you should speak with an attorney and make sure everything's done. Let's go on to the next one, Marty. Okay, so I always say that one of the things that we need to make sure we keep calm and stay organized. It's just as important for your family that they need access to this stuff. So it's not enough just to do it, because step one, you need to do it. You need to put these things in place we're going to talk about. But step two, you need to organize so that your family can get to it. Marty? Okay, one of the things that people don't think about is what would happen if I got ill, and could my family take care of things? Not take care of just me, but take care of things. And if you don't have things in place, I put this screen together because it gives you some of the ideas of the multiple problems that can happen if you don't have your stuff together. You can have problems with healthcare and medical and hospital. You can have problems with people accessing your medical information or medical documents. You can have trouble paying bills, paying rent, paying mortgage, dealing with loans, dealing with student loans, dealing with credit cards, and dealing with employment. I've had people that couldn't even get their loved one's paycheck because they didn't have authority to talk to an employer. So that's why we do these, is so that if that time comes, everything works smoothly. Next, Marty. One of the things that you need to realize is that without the proper legal documents, legally you are seen as a stranger to each other. And a lot of people think, well, I'm married. If something happens to me, my spouse can take care of me, or they can take care of things. That's not necessarily true, because you don't have an automatic right to take. And there's times that come up when you might have to do a signature or sign things or show an ID card. You have to have authority to do that. And family members, like this slide says, you're seen as a complete stranger. Let's go to the next one, Martin. You're seen as a complete stranger to each other if you don't have these documents. So even my spouse can be seen as if she, a stranger on the street to me, if they don't have legal documents. There's nothing worse that happens than to be able to try to get information and them to tell you, I can't talk to you. I'm sorry, but I understand that that's your mom. I understand that your dad, your son, daughter, your spouse. But unless I have legal authority showing you can talk, I can't talk to you. Next. So it's important to remember that, again, not even the spouse has automatic rights to manage your money, talk to investment companies or banks, pay your bills, transfer funds, consent to medical, make medical decisions, obtain medical information, education, and on and on and on. Some of you all may know my story, but I think now's a good time to tell you why this is so important to me, because this list right here is something that hit real close to home back in 2007 when I went through an illness, and I went from being completely perfectly healthy to completely incapacitated for almost 8 months. I had a disease called ulcerative colitis, and it got to the point where treatment hadn't worked, medication hadn't worked, and they finally had to remove my colon. I had to have my large intestine completely removed. When they do that, they replace it with what they call a J pouch. They take part of your upper intestine and they make it into a pouch, and they replace it so that you don't have to wear an ostomy bag the rest of your life. But unfortunately, in my situation, the doctors messed up and the bag ruptured, my J pouch ruptured. I was in critical condition for 10 days. I was in the hospital for 37 days the very first time. So I went from perfectly healthy, handling all of my affairs, to overnight, I was in the hospital for 37 days. 10 of those days I was critical, and I should have died. There was no medical reason I survived. And then I went through multiple surgeries and in and out of hospitals for 8 months. And during that time, my wife had trouble paying our electric bill because the electric bill was in my name. Her name wasn't on the account because I set it up when we moved into the house, and she didn't have a power of attorney to talk to them. So the simplest things become absolute nightmares at a time of a nightmare, because this usually happens when something tragic happens, like my illness. All of a sudden I'm incapacitated. My family doesn't know what to do or how to take care of things, and then they can't take care of things. So that's why it's so, so very important to have this. Next, Marty. So I always ask these questions. Would somebody be able to talk to the hospital personnel or get information for about you in the case of an emergency? I've got a daughter that is 18 years old, and I do these for a lot of families, but a lot of people don't realize that the minute a child turns 18, they're not a child anymore. And therefore you can't automatically treat them like a child, and you don't automatically have the rights and duties to them as you did when they're a child. When I take my 15-year-old to the hospital, the hospital personnel are going to talk to me because I'm the one that has to make all the decisions for my child. But the minute my oldest one turned 18, the hospital now looks at me and says, you're not her legal guardian anymore. You're now maybe your parent, but unless there's a document saying I can talk to you, I can't talk to you. And that's the worst thing that you could ever hear is, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you, even though I would like to. Next, Marty. How about being able to help somebody, being able to make medical decisions for them? The law says that if you're an adult, you have a right to make your own decisions. What if you can't make your decisions because you're unconscious, or because your mind is not functioning properly because of an accident or an illness, or just pain? I remember at one time I had to have emergency spine surgery. I've had quite a few medical issues throughout my life, but I ruptured a disc in my back. And I remember the pain being so excruciating at one point that if the doctors would have asked me what to do or how to do things, I couldn't have given them a rational answer just because of the pain level. You need to be able to have somebody in your corner that you've appointed to make medical decisions for you. The reality is if you don't have documents in place, the medical professionals have legal authority to make all decisions. So doctors, nurses, all the medical administration, they get to make decisions, and they don't even have to consult with your family. So you want to be able to appoint the people you love, you trust, to take care of you and make these decisions. Next. And again, just what I talked about, will they be able to make medical treatment decisions for you? Will your family be able to answer questions and make crucial decisions at a time of need? Next. This is kind of a laundry list again, like I had earlier. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I think, if I'm correct, Marty, everybody's going to get a copy of this presentation when they're done.
Everyone should have received the link with your registration to get on this morning. There was a link in there to download this presentation to these slides.
And if you didn't get it ahead of time, let us know. We'll give it to you.
You can email me, and I'll absolutely email it to you. Thank you. So.
Thank you. Well, this is I put together these laundry lists because a lot of people don't think of all the things that you have that come up at a time of need: managing bank accounts, paying loans, applying for loans, or breaking leases, signing things on behalf of the client of your family member. So there's so many financial and medical issues that come up. Next slide. I mean, the simplest things like responding to jury duty, or dealing with a traffic ticket that happened, or talking to the courts, or renewing a driver's license or passport. There's so many issues that we deal with every day in our life that, like with COVID, remember before COVID, all the things we took for granted, the going out to dinner and not having to worry about having a reservation, and being able to sit in public places and go to football games or sporting events. All these things that we take for granted, we do on a daily basis until all of a sudden you can't do it. And that's when this becomes a huge, huge problem. Next, Marty. So again, if you don't have documents, you don't have authority to act on somebody's behalf. Next. So let me go through very quickly. I know we're limited on our time, but I do want to kind of give you a list of the documents that I think should be included in everybody's plan. We at our firm, we do what we call a family and money protection plan. It's a specifically designed plan for every family we work with. But within this plan are various legal documents, legal structures, and these are some of those that you need to have in place. They go into two categories. Next slide, Marty. They go into first the financial category, and then second the healthcare category, and then third the death category. And so in your financial category, you need to have some financial powers of attorney, and those are the documents that allow you to make financial decisions for you, pay bills, talk to employers, talk to the bank, transfer money, those kind of things. You need to have healthcare documents. Those medical power of attorney allows you to make medical decisions for your family member. HIPAA allows you to get medical information and medical records. The advance directive, or what is also called the living will or the directive to physicians, they all have 3 different names for the same document. That document is where, while you're well, you make the decision if you want to be kept alive on life support in the event that everything goes wrong and there's no more hope of taking care of you, and it's either we keep you alive on a machine or we let you go. You decide that while you're well, so that your family doesn't have to make that decision. I always say the worst thing I could ever do to my family was put them in a position where they have to decide to pull my plug or not. I want to make that decision. So I have decided what will happen in that event. We do have people that worry about that. They say, well, I don't want to pull the plug too soon. That's not going to happen, because the one thing that medical people are afraid of more than anything is being sued. So this document only kicks in once they've made a medical decision that there's no more hope. And during COVID, people are worried about, well, my advance directive may say I don't want to be on ventilation. Well, they'll put you on ventilation if it's to save your life. They won't put you on ventilation if it's just to sustain your life. So that's what's really important about that document. And then there's the declaration of guardian in case of future incapacity, naming the person that will take care of me if I become permanently incapacitated and cannot care for myself. Instead of the courts naming that person or my family fighting over it, I decide who will be my guardian ahead of time, and I decide who won't be my guardian. So I can unname people in my family that may cause problems or that I don't want to burden. The next slide will covers what I call the death. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Marty. Before I get to the death documents, I want to point out this company to you. This has nothing to do with us, but we refer all of our clients to it because DocuBank is an online storage of these healthcare and financial forms. So it is a way for you to do your forms. You upload them to DocuBank. DocuBank sends you a credit card looking card. Next slide. And that card looks like this. This card you carry in your wallet. It's an emergency medical card, and it tells the medical professionals how to download your medical power of attorney, medical directives, HIPAA form. I carry this in my wallet right behind my driver's license. So if I'm in an auto accident and they take my driver's license out, they'll see this card. This card also tells them allergies, medical conditions I have. It gives them a contact information to my healthcare provider. It gives them also the contacts of my family that I want contacted in the event that I'm hurt. So this card is not very expensive. It's like $150 for a 5-year membership. It's well worth every penny. And I've included their website on this slide so that you can reach out to them. But we do this for every client that comes through our office. Next slide. So then we go from the living documents, I think it's the next one, I guess, Marty, to the death documents. The death documents, and a lot of people don't understand this, and I just want to touch on this real briefly, but a lot of people don't understand there's certain documents that are only good during life, and then there's certain documents that are only good after death. And so the documents I've talked about ahead of time, the powers of attorney and medical documents, they are not good after death. They die when the person dies. And so I get calls all the time from people say, well, my dad just passed away. I need to pay my dad's bills, but I have his power of attorney, so I'm going to get into his bank account and pay his bills. You cannot do that because the power of attorney is void the minute the person passes away. Now we have to look at the death documents. Now the person's gone. Now what do we have? Do we have a will? Do we have a trust? What kind of documents do we have to take care of things after death? And so the main thing people always hear, I need a will. Yes, you need a will. Everybody should at least have a last will and testament. If you don't have a will, the government has a will for you, and you're not going to like it. So please don't do that to your family. Make sure you at least do these basic documents and at least put a will in place. You also should designate somebody to carry out your funeral wishes, which Kristine's going to talk about that more. But there is a form that we can do that says, this is the person responsible for carrying out my funeral wishes. The document's actually called a designation of a representative for disposition of remains, which to me is a very kind of morbid name for a document, but it is, all it says is this is the person responsible for my funeral. And we also recommend people do an anatomical gift form if they want to donate their organs. I know that when I went to DPS and got my driver's license, they asked, do you want to be a donor or not? Well, I say yes. That doesn't really tell people much. So the anatomical gift form exactly says what you want done. Do you want to donate just for transplantation purposes? Do you want to donate your whole body? Do you want to donate to medicine? So it's a very specific form of what you want to do, and I highly recommend that. The next slide talks about the one of the things that we do for a lot of people, which is trusts. A lot of people hear the term trust and they don't know what it is. It's a very misunderstood thing. But if people have heard it, they think, oh, it's for the wealthy people or it's for people with special circumstances. I do more trust work than I do anything else because trust can be beneficial to anybody. They are an outstanding, phenomenal document that allows us to keep the government and the courts out of our life. It's a way to avoid probate when a person passes away. So there's so many things you can do with trusts. I could spend another hour and a half just talking about that. But if anybody wants more information about that, I'll be more than happy to talk to you on the phone after this is over. And I'd love to teach you about that if you'd like. Next slide. One of the warnings, though, I do want to tell everybody, and I say this not because this is what I do for a living. I remember when I started doing estate planning and LegalZoom came about, and people were all, oh, you must not like LegalZoom. They take business away from you. No, the reality is my bank account loves LegalZoom, or people like them, but my conscience hates it because things that you get through the internet are not good. And it's buyer beware. You don't know what you're buying. Next slide, Ray. So when you get on the internet, one of the things you need to realize is that they are not regulated by the same thing an attorney is. I am regulated by the State Bar of Texas. I am licensed. I have to do certain things to uphold my license. And if I don't do it right, they can take my license away. One of the things that's in our law is actually a law written into the Texas government code that gives these online internet providers immunity. So it basically says, as long as they do a disclaimer saying they're not a law firm and this isn't legal advice, they can sell you legal documents and they're not responsible. So they can sell you good ones and they can sell you bad ones. And I once had an ethics attorney tell me, yeah, it's like selling a pin over the internet. And I thought to myself, well, if I sell somebody a pin, how do they know when it works? When you use it. If I sell you a will, how do you know when it works? When it's too late. And so please, please, please don't do it yourself on the internet to do this. The next slide shows a little bit of these disclaimers that LegalZoom comes up with, and they're very, very clear about this is not an attorney-client privilege information. We are not a law firm. This is not a substitute for an attorney. The next slide is the one I found from another big one on the internet called Rocket Lawyer. They go above and beyond and let you know that they're not a law office. And because of these disclaimers, this one simple paragraph that they do, there is no liability if they do something wrong. Next slide. So there's other things other than your legal documents that I highly recommend people put in their ice pack. And that's information that your family's going to need, like your driver's license, your social security numbers, those information, any medical cards you have, any Medicare supplements or Medicare information or Medicaid information you might have, lists of your medications. How many times do you go to the doctor and the doctor asks, what medications are you on? Oh, crud, I didn't write it all down. I can't remember all my. Well, if you can't remember all your medications, most likely your family's not. So make sure that's somewhere where they can get it. List of contacts in case of an emergency. Who would you like contacted? So we put this list together and I'll let you look at it on your own. We'll go over to the next slide. Because there's just a lot of information of things that you should have organized so that if that time comes, you make life so easy on your family. I know so many people that work their rears off to provide for their family, take care of their family. My family is my number one priority, but yet I didn't put everything in order so that when something happens to me, I make the life easier on my family instead of harder on my family. Next slide. This is, again, more information I'll let you look at on your own. Next. And sum that up so that, as you can see, there's a lot of information I highly recommend that people use. So there's just so much that you need. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kristine now. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. Thanks, Marty, and Kristine, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Of course, Debbie already introduced me that I'm with Dignity Memorial, and I've been a funeral director for nearly 13 years. It's the only career I've ever known. I'm blessed to be doing what I do every day and serving families, and I've definitely been caring for families as a funeral director for 13 years, but I've actually been kind of preaching and promoting the importance of pre-planning your final arrangements for longer than that, actually closer to 20 years, which is hard to believe. But in fact, I was actually in high school giving speeches in speech classes and in college on why pre-planning your funeral is so important. So, you know, I think back to that, and I hope that I left an impression on some of my classmates as they're probably now dealing with, you know, arranging funerals for their parents or grandparents or spouses, unfortunately. So hopefully I left some sort of impression and they've realized how important my presentation was to them, because I think we're never too young or too old to hear why we need to get that finished. So I strongly agree across the board every day in my career that no one should walk into my facilities or funeral home at all without being educated and being informed of options available to them. So today I'm just going to educate you on why you should be pre-planning, why it's important, the benefits, what happens when you do it, what happens when you don't, because no one should really have to face the death with the unknown. So I'll go through that with you. And unfortunately, sometimes, you know, families walk into a funeral home and they can cause arguments because, hey, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. We don't know what our loved one wanted. Maybe the financial piece is going to cause additional stress. So I'm going to touch on that a little bit too today. So again, I'm just going to educate you guys on the importance of the why today and how we can actually create a final celebration of life when the time comes. Next slide, please. So sometimes it's difficult to get this conversation started, but trust me, you don't want to lose someone and not be prepared to celebrate their life with every detail remembered. So choosing to be remembered, it's a very personal decision, a very personal process to go through, and the options available are truly limitless. And the holiday season is a great time to get this conversation started. You may be thinking, gosh, I don't want to be with my family on Christmas Day and start talking about funerals, right? That's depressing. But actually, we find that when families are together at a more, I would say, sentimental time of the year, sometimes it's easier to get this conversation started. You know, you're already maybe sharing family stories of past Christmases and past relatives that have already gone on. But it's a great time to talk about how you would like to be remembered someday. And this year, just due to how different things have been all year long, might just provide that opportunity to have a more relaxed conversation about this, because I'm sure we've all been touched by COVID in some way. You know, maybe we've lost loved ones, maybe we've had loved ones that been close to being dead. Unfortunately, those things have happened. They're touched our lives, and I think when we're around that or have experienced a loss ourselves, it kind of gets us thinking like, gosh, I probably should start thinking about what's going to happen when I pass away. So again, it's a great time to bring this up to your family. If you're someone who may be a child of an older person, maybe, hey, it's time to get my mom's arrangements in place. So today I'm just going to touch on how we can actually start that conversation, so we can help plan for their final wishes, their final arrangements. So whichever role you might play in this scenario, whether you are a caregiver to your parent, whether you're getting up in years and you're just wanting to get those plans in place, or whether you're younger and, hey, I need to get this done, because of course we never know when our time will be. I'm just going to share some tips that will hopefully help you create a life story for when the time comes. Next slide. So when you start this conversation with your loved ones, make sure you document that conversation. So it's a great thing to get the conversation started, but document it. You know, take notes. If you're able to, and everybody present in that conversation is comfortable with even recording it, whether that's just audio or video, that's going to be even more helpful and possibly even cherished later on, you know, once that person is gone. So what I can advise is when that conversation started, you know, if you know this is happening, mentally prepare for that, take notes, and if there's some things that, hey, it could cause some uneasiness during that conversation, you know, take the notes, maybe even tell people, hey, this is what we're going to talk about, so nothing's really a surprise when the topic or conversation is brought up. And the whole premise of this conversation is storytelling, so just make that the focus. So when death does occur, we can provide a big celebration, life story to that person and for that person. So you're going to see that theme throughout the conversation today. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this conversation can truly be difficult. So it may not be a bad idea, like I said, to mentally prepare for this. Maybe put your thoughts on paper, maybe pour a glass of wine, whatever you choose to do to get comfortable, so you're mentally prepared to start this. And as I mentioned, that first step is really going to be preparing and reflecting on what's important to you and what's happened throughout your life that, hey, I want to be remembered for this, or I want generations to come to discuss this, you know, in 20 Christmases from now. So how do you want to be remembered? You can really stop and think about that for a moment. And I think, you know, most of us are going to think about, you know, we had a really great career, people are going to remember me for that, or hey, I was the best pie baker on the block, whatever it is. I think we all have something unique, and that's why it's even more important to make sure that we share our thoughts and our wishes with others that are important to us, because we are unique. And when we go to a funeral or a memorial service, there really should not ever be one exactly the same. But I can tell you, in the history of funerals, that happens frequently, right? We're going to have a pastor speak, and we're going to have the 23rd Psalm, we're going to have our obituary read, we're going to sing Amazing Grace and How Great Thou Art, and that's going to be our funeral. The times have changed, and I think people really desire a more customizable, personalized service or type of celebration, maybe even have a party. So going through this conversation with your loved ones is really going to allow you to have that celebration for you, not for anyone else, not for the neighbor's funeral you went to last week. It's going to be something that's customizable to you. So when your family and friends, they share their memories of you, you know, what are some things that they're going to say? You know, what do you think is going to be said about you? How might your cemetery memorialization reflect your hobbies and interests? Meaning, if you're going to be buried or cremated and placed at a cemetery, you can get custom options on your headstone. Maybe you were that prized pie baker, and you could have a pie on your headstone. The options are limitless. So again, the customization piece is really, really important to making this all about you. You know, what are your family's traditions and customs? How might they influence the type of service you might have? If you are the traditional Catholic, chances are you're going to want a mass. Well, could we add something to that to really have that celebration possibly the evening before? What type of meaningful memories can we capture through that conversation so we actually can tie that into some sort of permanent memorial or celebration of life? So just make sure that you're reflecting on the stories that are important to you so you're prepared to share those with those you love when that conversation happens. Okay, so as you have this dialogue, there's really 5 important topics to visit. So we're going to go through those. We call those the 5 L's. So we're going to touch on life, love, learn, laugh, and legacy. Next slide. So the first one we're going to touch is life, okay? I think when we have a celebration, it's all about the life of the person who lived, and it's important to come up with ways that we can really honor that life at the time. So we all have a life that we lived, and there are moments in time, experiences that have stood out to us. You know, have you lived your life how you wanted to? What have you done? What memories, experiences make up who you are today? I think whether it's career, whether it's family, negative, positive experiences, really, it makes us who we end up being throughout our life. You know, do you still bleed your college colors? Are people going to remember that you're a big Aggie fan, you know, at the age of 85? You know, those things can definitely be incorporated into what we would consider a life story or celebration of life. You know, like I said, are you known for your hobbies? Are you known for your over-the-top Christmas decorations every year? And that could be, and we could even have a Christmas in July, even if death occurs in July, if that's what you were known for. So it really just comes back down to what makes you you, and doesn't it make sense that a celebration of life after you're gone should incorporate the things that you loved and how you lived throughout your life. So just ponder on those things and take time to share with your loved ones your fondest memories through your life, what's important to you, what experiences have made you you. Next slide. Okay, next one is love. And I think this might be actually the simplest piece of the conversation, because it's pretty easy to think about what we love and who we love, you know, who's important to us, what does our family and friends love about us. Those are things to incorporate into that conversation. What are our passions? And I think taking time to have this conversation, especially if you're recording it, it may prompt dialogue that would maybe otherwise would not have happened. So it's time to talk to our family, talk to our loved ones, our friends, whoever's helping us with our final arrangements about how we feel about each other and what's important to us. And I think a lot of us, you know, can say, hey, I'm guilty because I don't tell my sister enough how I feel about her. Well, now's the perfect time to get that out. And it's okay to get emotional. It's okay to get sentimental. Life's too short, I think, if we don't allow ourselves to be open to those opportunities. And this time, I think, will really be cherished. These conversations will be cherished, because I think too often, like I said, we don't take the time and it's going to allow us to actually create that meaningful celebration for the loved ones we leave behind. Next topic, next slide, is learn. So I think this piece is going to take a little bit of deeper thought. So it might be something we want to ponder on before we meet with our family. You know, what have we learned over the years? Or if you're assisting someone else to do their planning, what have you learned from them? What lessons have they learned that they could pass on to you? Whether it's allowed them to really have a fulfilling life, or maybe, hey, I've made some mistakes and I would tell everybody not ever to do the things I did. So it's a great way, I think, just to be able to share what we've learned throughout our life, so we can let future generations maybe not make those mistakes, or hey, do things the way I did, because you're going to be a lot happier. So think about what we've learned. And as humans, I think we're constantly learning, and we've learned in our life, you know, what's important. So let's share that for our future generations. This will take time, and do that. Take time on this topic. Think about how your life's turned out, the good, bad, the ugly, and your experiences and your advice could really have an impact even on your loved ones now. Maybe things that they don't even know about you, or hey, your grandchildren are going to hear this story now out of your own mouth. So I think it's important to, let's talk about what we learn. Next slide. Next is laugh, and who doesn't love a good laugh? I'm a big laugher. We laugh a lot in my household, and it's important. I think it definitely just makes life a lot more fun if you can laugh at yourself and laugh with others on a regular basis. But what funny stories do you remember throughout your life? You know, as a kid, as an adult, into your older years, what are funny stories that will be remembered about you? You know, I think what makes this topic fun is because we can laugh at ourselves. We can think about what we find funny now, and how we can incorporate someday into our celebration of life laughter, right? Grieving a loved one and experiencing a death is hard enough, but if we can bring laughter into that type of situation, as much or as little as you want, I just definitely think that that's good food for our soul. Next slide. Okay, the final topic in the 5 L's is going to be legacy, and I definitely think legacy ties the first 4 together. So just think about that. What is that for you? How do you want to be remembered by? What's everybody going to say about you after you pass? You know, what will future generations hear about you? And how are you going to be remembered as a part of your family for generations to come? I know me personally, you know, I feel like especially holidays, that's when the conversations come up about, you know, my father's grandparents and things that they did. And even though I never met them, I can visualize what that person was like, and, you know, what they overcame, and who they were as a person, and what positive attributes they have. So think about that, because I think it's going to happen, that people are still going to be talking about us for years to come. Next slide. During this conversation, it's going to be a great time to share photos, share mementos, you know, pull those things out, go through those, and then make sure that your loved ones know how to access those should they need to be pulled out after your passing for a meaningful celebration. So if we want to set up tables and have memorabilia that speaks to who you were, we have access to all that. So be sure to do that. Next slide. In my years in the funeral business, there's been countless times where the decision of disposition, meaning burial or cremation, it's unknown when someone passes away. So what I mean by unknown is, hey, that person who's left behind has no idea if their loved one wants burial or cremation because it was never discussed. And, you know, it's hard for some people to, I think about that. Well, because I was married to my husband for 60 years, but not once did we talk about our funeral. And it happens more than what you think. But it's our responsibility to our family members, the ones that we leave behind, to tell them what we want. If we don't know what we want, well, we need to start exploring options, because we know it's going to happen. And leaving them to make that decision really puts a lot on their shoulders. I've seen it firsthand, and the comment I always hear from families is, gosh, did I make the right decision, right? Or maybe there's going to be sibling rivalry. I've seen that. Half the kids went burial, half the kids went cremation. And when that happens, it really just stops the process altogether and delays things. But if you can kind of take charge and make that decision for them, it really takes out all the guesswork for them and makes a happy family, I promise. If you choose burial, there's some options that go along with that. Of course, are you going to be buried in ground or in a mausoleum? Are you going to stay local, or are you going to be shipped out of state? Are you going to be next to your spouse, or do you want to purchase the whole family estate in a cemetery? So you can see, once you decide burial or cremation, there's a lot of other decisions that have to be made along with that. If you choose cremation, do you want to have a full traditional service with you in a casket for a visitation? prior to cremation, or would you prefer to have a service with an urn or maybe without an urn? So there's a lot of different decisions, and then think about cemetery options as well for cremation. So cremation does allow for placement at a cemetery, and whether you bury or cremate, of course, you have to think about what's my headstone going to look like. So the list goes on, and this can be a lengthy conversation. And when I've talked today just about having that conversation with your loved ones, you know, it may not happen on one day or for a 2-hour period. It may be an ongoing conversation you need to have with your family, simply because there's a lot of decisions to be made. You can see that choosing burial or cremation, even though it's a very personal decision, you know, it doesn't stop there. You need to make sure that you talk through your wishes with your family, and then you need to record everything. What I do ask is, don't be the person that says, you know what, I'm not going to talk about this with my family. They can just, you know, bury me in the backyard. Or I'm not going to talk about it because I don't really care what they do with my body when I'm gone, because it doesn't matter. And although I think those thoughts are respectable because maybe you really don't care, it's just a lot to leave your loved ones to make those decisions. So you can leave them detailed instructions. That'll truly be a gift to them. Next slide. So one thing I know I mentioned at the very beginning was, you know, getting the finances taken care of. So once you really decided what you want to do, which is the big piece, and having the conversation with your family so they can really have a great final celebration of your life when everything is said and done, make sure that you look into payment options. So I know at our funeral homes, we offer payment options. You can get on a yearly payment plan. You can pay in full. One, it's going to take any financial burden away from those you leave behind, but it's also going to lock in today's prices. So you're not having to pay more in 10 years because, of course, our prices go up just like anybody else's. Most of us can put a lot of effort into planning other important events throughout our life, whether it's graduations, weddings, anniversary parties, the list can go on. And I think a lot of us as well, you know, we have our health insurance, our homeowner's insurance, our car insurance in case something happens. Well, death is going to happen, so we need to plan for something that's going to happen. So it makes sense financially, it makes sense for your family, because it will happen, so let's prepare for it. So that's an option, which of course, should you think about getting your arrangements in place, it's definitely something we do recommend. So the entire process is secure and taken care of. So think about what I went over today, and actually what Fred has gone over today, and just think, like, if you were faced with a death right now of your loved one, do you know who you would call? Do you know what your loved one wants for arrangements? So just remember the 5 L's, life, love, learn, laugh, and legacy. And think about, you know, what's your family going to do to get this down on paper and to talk through this so you know how your loved one wants to be remembered. I do have a personal planning guide available upon request. If you do tell me you want one, we're going to order that for you and set that appointment up for you so we can hand deliver that. I do recommend getting everything down in this book. It's details from what needs to go on your death certificate, onto an obituary, you know, if you want to wear your glasses at the viewing, what songs you might want, and the things that you're going to be conversing with your family members and friends about. So if you want to get this guide, please reach out. You simply just owe this to your family, because I can tell you, over all the families I've met over the years, when this has been completed, this guide has been completed, all the answers are there. It makes a hard process much more bearable. So just remember that I believe, and I know Fred believes, our company believes, that planning your arrangements in advance is truly a gift to your family members, those you leave behind. So just think about how you really can owe that to them and gift that to them. And I've even had families say to me when they didn't even know mom and dad had arrangements in place and death occurs and they find, hey, mom had a pre-arrangement. Wow, this is like the greatest gift she could have given me, because it takes a lot of the headache and the stress out of the situation. We're also going to be providing a caregiver tip sheet that goes over a lot of the items I covered today. So if you're helping someone plan for this, or if you're doing it for yourself, there's just a reference sheet for the items we've covered. And if you have the opportunity this holiday season to start this conversation with your loved ones, do it. If not, I just recommend put it on your to-do list for 2021 so you can get your arrangements in order. At least start it. I think starting it's probably the hardest part. But do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, and just do it. There's truly no time like the present, and we don't know when our last day is going to be. So be prepared so your family, your funeral home can give you that final celebration that you deserve. Thank you. Back to Fred.
Thank you, Kristine. I just want to kind of wrap up. We need some time for questions, but the slide that you're looking at right now is one that's very important to me, because I know a lot of you all are taking time to get some continuing education today, but more than that, the stuff that you've learned today, please take action. I always say, I love this quote, information without implementation is worse than a waste of time, because not only have you spent your time listening to this today, but you've learned something. Please do something with it. Take it and run with it. And if you have questions about it, let us know. I know we have a lot of questions that have been coming in. So Marty, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you and wrap it up and give it over to you.
All right, well, let me chime in here. Here we've had 3 questions come through, so let me just take them in order. What is the approximate cost of putting all of this together, Marty? Or not Marty, but Fred?
Okay. I get this question almost every single presentation that I do, and I hate it, but I always have to give you the attorney answer. It depends. The cost usually depends on the family structure, if you do it right. Now, there are ways of doing, it less expensive, but I do not recommend that. This is one of those areas you truly get what you pay for. And so if you want a plan done right and you want it for your family and you want it to be able to work, then you're going to need to spend a little bit of money to do it. And it'll depend on what happens with your family. I usually say it can run, a good plan can run anywhere from $2,500 to $10,000, depending on family structures. There are payment plans, so we try to work with people to make it right. But the reality with these plans is that you do not want a one-size-fits-all fill in the blank. You want it custom made. I kind of use it like a parachute. If I was going to go buy a parachute, I would want to buy one that I know is going to open when I need it, instead of one that I hope is going to open when I need it. And so spend the money to buy the good parachute so that it'll take care of you and your family.
Okay, and Kristine, I'm going to ask you to answer that question as well.
Thank you. I can't give an exact, because every family is different, and until families meet with us face to face and we go over all of the options available, that's going to determine your price. So we've got simple cremation, which includes cremation and no services, going all the way up to full burial services with cemetery property, which also can be customized. So the options are limitless, and that price is going to be determined on exactly what the family wants and what they select.
Okay. All right. And the next question, Fred, was, and this is from Kelly, do all wills have to be probated?
Okay. I would say majority of wills, yes, do have to be probated. Not all of them, but majority. The reason a will has to be probated is when the family owns property that needs to be transferred usually. So people that own a house or real estate almost always have to go through probate. There are a few special deeds that can be done on property that transfer it outside of probate, but they're not recommended because we don't know how they're going to be treated. So a few years back, the legislation passed a law allowing you to do what's called a transfer on death deed, Our office will absolutely not do those because we don't know what they're going to be treated like down the road. Because there's a difference between what the law says and what the rules are. And when it comes to transferring real estate, the rules are dictated by title companies and other people like that. And so we don't recommend those kind of deeds. So yes, the majority of wills have to be probated in the state of Texas.
Okay. And then John has asked, are there legal ramifications and or complications if I've already signed up with UT Southwestern's willed body program with the intent to donate my remains to medical research?
Okay, I'll go ahead and answer that. I would say yes, that if you've already gone through the paperwork and done, it's like a contractual relationship that you do with those people. If it's not something you want to do anymore, then you need to change it. You'll need to make sure that you do the paperwork to undo what you've done.
Okay. Kelly is asking too, regarding the probate, if there's no property or investments, or wait a minute, there is no property investments, do they have beneficiaries on them?
Okay, I think what you're...
You know what? I'm wondering, Marty, can you unmute?
Yes. Let me work.
Because I think that might,
the
explanation may be helpful there.
Okay. Kelly, can you, you should be able to unmute yourself, I believe. Kelly. I'm just going to promote you to a panelist, which will allow you to talk. But you'll need to unmute yourself, Kelly.
Okay, and while she's doing that, Wynette asked us, where do I send a request for the booklet? If you will just send an email to me, it's Deborah, DEBRA.Tall@Dignity Memorial. We will get that lined up for you.
And just so you know, Deborah's email is on the very last slide. And we haven't proceeded to that yet. But Kelly, you should be able to unmute yourself. Are you able to talk, Kelly? Maybe not.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and answer what I think we're referring to. There's always the question of, well, if I don't have any assets that need to be transferred, if they're set up with beneficiary designations or joint checking accounts, do we have to go through probate? I get that question quite often, and the answer is no. That if things pass outside of probate, you might be able to avoid the probate process as long as everything goes exactly the way it's supposed to. Because if there's things that happen, I've had to probate lots of cases that shouldn't have had to be probated because things didn't go exactly right. So I always recommend that you have a good will as a backup, even if you don't think you're going to need probate. My mom is a perfect example. She's 88. I've set everything up the way I needed to for her. But right now at her life, she's living in an apartment, so she doesn't own any real estate. And she has one checking account. That's all she's got left. And it's a joint with me. So when my mom passes, I'm not going to most likely have to probate her estate because there's nothing that needs to be transferred. I highly recommend anybody look at the trust and learn more about trusts, because setting up a trust, make sure you avoid probate. If it's set up right and it's funded right, trusts are the greatest things in the world for avoiding probate.
Yeah. Okay, and then Kristine from Alana, what benefits are available to veterans for burial and or pre-planning?
Okay. So with this, just so you do know, we do have a veterans planning guide as well, which we can get to you, that really goes through what veterans are entitled to upon passing. I think there's a misconception, oh, the VA is going to take care of everything, and that's not the case. Of course, we have national cemeteries with eligible, honorable, discharged veterans can have a burial space with their spouse and any dependent children at the national cemeteries, which would include the space, the opening and closing fees, and a out-of-burial container and or vault at the cemetery. So that's included. And then, of course, the funeral home can take care of orchestrating any type of military honors that the veteran's eligible for. And then the veteran's also entitled to a headstone. That is about it. So there's no additional, discounts at time of need when death occurs because you are a veteran. It's just up to kind of your rank and the Veterans Administration.
Okay. Are there any other questions out there? I think we've covered everybody's that I see on our chat. Check one other place. Okay. Yeah, that's what it looks like. First off, I want to say thank you again to Fred and Kristine. This information has been extremely valuable. Marty has had the slide up on the screen for contact information with telephone numbers. I've put my email address in the chat box so that if you would like to get in touch with me, I can connect you or with anybody that you need to talk to or with the resources that we've talked about here today. Again, I want to thank you so much, both you and Fred and Kristine, for being here and for everybody to be here on the presentation. When this is over, you'll have the possibility of being able to go back and listen to the recordings or again ask any questions directly to Fred or Kristine.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Yeah, well,
Appreciate you all.
You guys, it was great, great information.
Exactly, and it's something we all need to address, and our hesitation or procrastination, I guess I should say, both, prevents us to really doing what we know in our hearts and in our heads we need to do. So at this point, I want to wish everybody an extremely great holiday season. I know it's going to be different than any of us expect or probably want, but you know what? There are blessings even during this time of COVID if we look for them. And I'd like to also invite you back to our event in January. It'll be on January the 21st, and we're going to be talking about promoting brain health in 2021. And basically, as we're all trying to recover from 2020. I'm hoping that there's something magical that happens on December the 31st, moving over into January the 1st.
I would imagine a lot of alcohol consumption. I would imagine.
But anyway, if there's anything we can ever do for you, if Fred's law firm can do for you, please contact us. We'd be happy to help and direct you where we can help direct. And with that, anybody have anything else to say before we leave?
No, thank you guys very much. God bless everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you all too. Thank you all so much. Great information.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.